most important Jaeger ever built has no iconic design, no massive kill count, and no dramatic final battle. It's a hunched, spindly prototype that almost killed its own pilots before it ever saw a kaiju, but every single Jaeger that came after it, every saved city, every pilot who ever drifted traces back to this one machine. So let's start at the very beginning. Brawler Yukon. Brawler Yukon is the Jaeger equivalent of a garage project that accidentally changed the world. Launched January 30th, 2015, its debut was a disaster. The pilot suffered a seizure during the neural load, the entire unit crashed, and the program nearly died before it started. But here's where it gets interesting. On February 18th, 2015, pilots Caitlin Lightcap and Sergio D'Onofrio stumbled into the first successful neural drift sync. They weren't trying to invent co-piloting. They basically fell into it by accident, and that accident became the foundation of every Jaeger that followed. The thing itself looks exactly like what it is. A prototype built in a hurry, about 200 feet tall with a hunched frame, long spindly arms, and dome shoulder armor that screams, "We had a deadline." Its weight was never officially published, which is why it sits at the bottom of this list. Armament was bare minimum. Arm-mounted blades, back-mounted mortars, no plasma cannons, no chainswords. Just enough to survive, and survive it did. On April 23rd, 2015, Brawler Yukon deployed against a Category 1 kaiju called Karloff in Vancouver. Humanity won. The Jaeger held. The entire program got its proof of concept. Nobody remembers this fight, but it literally justified the existence of every Jaeger that came after. But once the drift proved it could work, the next challenge wasn't just building a Jaeger. It was building one that felt like a real weapon system. Mark I Coyote Tango. At 2,312 tons and 280 feet tall, Coyote Tango is one of the earliest examples of the Jaeger program realizing brute force alone wasn't enough. Launched December 30th, 2015 as Japan's second Mark I, it paired old school mass with something much more interesting: range. Its defining weapons were twin long-range ballistic mortar cannons backed up by a retractable VPI energy caster mounted on the forearm. That made Coyote Tango feel less like a street brawler and more like mobile artillery with legs. It could soften a kaiju up before the thing ever got close enough to start tearing armor off, and the machine's history matters almost as much as its firepower. During the Tokyo fight against Onibaba, Stacker Pentecost and Tamsin Sevier pushed it through a brutal 3-hour engagement that ended with reactor damage so severe the unit had to be pulled back for major repairs. That battle also became the first recorded case of a Jaeger operating with only one pilot after Tamsin was knocked unconscious mid-fight. That's what makes Coyote Tango so fascinating. It sits right on the line between prototype-era improvisation and real military doctrine. Bigger than Brawler Yukon, more specialized than the first generation had any right to be, and already showing that Jaeger design was evolving way faster than anyone expected. And if Coyote Tango showed how quickly the Mark I era was evolving, the next machine showed what happened when one nation committed completely to raw durability. Mark I Cherno Alpha, 2,412 tons. That's not a typo. Cherno Alpha is the heaviest confirmed operational Jaeger in the entire program, and it fought like every single one of those tons mattered. Launched Christmas Day 2015 in Russia, Cherno Alpha was built with one philosophy: don't move, don't dodge, don't retreat, just stand there and hit harder than whatever's hitting you. And for 6 consecutive years, that philosophy worked flawlessly. Cherno Alpha defended the Siberian anti-kaiju wall perimeter without a single breach until 2021. No other Jaeger stationed at a fixed position matched that record. Not one. The engineering behind it is almost absurdly straightforward. The Z-14 Tesla fists generate up to 415 kilovolts of electrical discharge paired with roll of nickels melee weapons that turn each punch into a demolition event. Spiked foot anchors literally bolt the Jaeger to the ocean floor so it can absorb punishment without being knocked backward. The MGS-112 nuclear reactor with dual incendiary fuel systems keeps everything running indefinitely. The design logic is simple: be so heavily armored and so powerfully armed that the kaiju runs out of options before you do. Remember Guardian Bravo: light, fast, designed to avoid getting hit, taken out in a single engagement. Cherno Alpha is the exact opposite of that philosophy, and its final battle proves why raw endurance matters. The fight against Kaiju Wraitha lasted nearly 6 hours. 6 hours of sustained combat with the Jaeger anchored to the seafloor, absorbing continuous punishment, refusing to give ground. No other Jaeger in the program endured that duration of continuous engagement. Not the Mark 5s, not the Mark 6s, nobody. Cherno Alpha didn't lose because it was outclassed. It lost because multiple critical systems failed simultaneously after absorbing more damage than any Jaeger was ever designed to take. It was outnumbered and unsupported. The wall didn't break, it was abandoned. But the Jaeger program wasn't only getting heavier, it was also getting smarter, cleaner, and much more iconic. Mark III Gypsy Danger, this is the one. 1,980 tons, 260 feet tall, launched July 10th, 2017 out of Anchorage Shatterdome. Gypsy Danger isn't just a Jaeger, it's the Jaeger, the one that defined what these machines are supposed to look like. And that wasn't an accident. The faded blue paint, the broad shoulders, the overall silhouette, every single design choice was pulled directly from World War II fighter aircraft aesthetics. Mid-century American military iconography built into a giant robot. It set the visual language for every Jaeger that came after it. But here's what makes Gypsy Danger special. It's not the dual eye 19 plasma casters, it's not the retractable GD6 chainswords or the elbow rocket that hits like a freight train from hell. It's not even the nuclear vortex turbine generating enough energy annually to power a major city. All of that is impressive, but the real story is survival. Gypsy Danger was the only Mark III Jaeger to survive the entire Kaiju war. Every single one of its contemporaries ended up scrapped in Oblivion Bay. Not Gypsy. It went through the Mark III restoration program and came back to active service when newer, shinier Jaegers were already dead. The kill count sits at a minimum of 5 confirmed Kaiju, with some sources pushing it to 7 when you factor in assists. The exact number is still debated across novelizations and film materials, which honestly just adds to the legend. Its detachable head was technically a vulnerability, but paired with the right pilots, that old technology outperformed machines built a decade later. A 10-year-old design that kept winning when everything around it was dying. That's not engineering, that's legacy. And while Gypsy Danger became the face of the program, other countries were pushing the design philosophy in very different directions. Mark IV, Crimson Typhoon. At 1,722 tons, Crimson Typhoon is one of the lightest Jaegers to ever see active combat. But light doesn't mean weak, not even close. Launched in 2018 out of Changzhou, China, this thing was built with a full titanium core and 50 diesel engines per individual muscle strand. That gave it a speed rating of 9 out of 10, making it one of the fastest Jaegers ever constructed. And it used that speed to rack up 7 confirmed Kaiju kills over 8 years defending Hong Kong. A strong record that never got the recognition it deserved compared to its American counterparts. But here's where Crimson Typhoon gets really interesting. It ran a 3-pilot system instead of 2. Its rotating con pod was specifically engineered to distribute cognitive load across 3 pilots simultaneously. More brains, more coordination, more combat options. Whether that extra complexity was an advantage or just more points of failure is still debated, but the results spoke for themselves. And then there's the Thundercloud formation. Crimson Typhoon's signature attack split all 12 fingers across its 3 arms into rotating saw blades at once. All 3 hands essentially became industrial meat grinders capable of shredding through Kaiju hide like it was nothing. The trade-off for all that speed and flexibility was real though. The neck and con pod had reduced armor protection. For years, that didn't matter, until Otachi exploited that exact vulnerability in 2025, crushing the cockpit and killing all 3 pilots instantly. You sacrifice protection to move faster and hit harder, and it works beautifully until the one time it doesn't. Then Australia took all of that accumulated experience and built what many fans still see as the peak of the original Jaeger era. Mark V Striker Eureka, $100 billion. That's what it cost to build Striker Eureka, the single most expensive machine in human military history, and it's not even close. No aircraft carrier, no stealth bomber, no space station comes anywhere near that number. But here's the thing, it was worth every cent. Striker Eureka launched November 2nd, 2019 as the first and only Mark V Jaeger ever put into service. There was never a second one, and it didn't need a sequel because it racked up 13 confirmed Kaiju kills, the highest kill count of any Jaeger in the entire program. Across any generation, any country, any pilot team, nobody else touched that number. Where Crimson Typhoon was a surgeon, Striker was a sledgehammer moving at full sprint. Powered by its X-16 supercell chamber and armed with 18K stunner warheads in its anti-Kaiju missile launcher, this thing was built for one purpose: overwhelming aggression. Pilots Chuck and Herc Hansen shaped its fighting style into what fans call a dirty boxer approach. approach. No patience, no waiting for openings, just speed, violence, and hit-and-run lethality that left kaiju dead before they understood what was happening, and then humanity strapped a nuclear bomb to it and sent it on a one-way trip into the Pacific Breach. That's the part that stings. The most capable, most lethal, most expensive Jaeger ever constructed was used as a kamikaze delivery system during Operation Pitfall because there was literally no other option. Fans still argue about whether sacrificing Stryker was the right call, and honestly, it's a fair question. But the answer doesn't change the outcome. Stryker Eureka went into the breach and never came back. After the war, though, the replacement design started chasing very different answers to the same problem. Mark 6, Guardian Bravo. Guardian Bravo looks like someone designed a Jaeger the way Lockheed Martin designs fighter jets. And honestly, that's exactly what happened. Launched November 1st, 2025 in Tokyo. This thing weighs 1,975 tons, making it the lightest Mark 6 on this list. But that's by design. Guardian Bravo was never meant to stand toe-to-toe with a kaiju and trade punches. It was built to never let one get close enough to try. The whole aesthetic is pulled directly from F-16 fighter aircraft. Angular, aerodynamic, built to reposition fast and hit from a distance. Its speed rating sits at 9 out of 10, matching Crimson Typhoon, and it's equipped with burst foils for rapid aerial repositioning and core salvo charges for standoff engagement. Everything about this Jaeger screams glass cannon, but the real showpiece is the LX-16 Arc Whip. This thing is a proto-metallic successor to traditional chainsword technology, and it functions as a long-range electrified flail. Picture a massive, crackling whip of superheated metal that can lash a kaiju from dozens of meters away, delivering devastating electrical discharge on every strike. On paper, it's genius. Keep the monster at range, punish it for approaching, and never absorb a hit you don't have to. Here's the problem. That philosophy works right up until the moment a mega kaiju throws you through several office buildings. Guardian Bravo was rendered completely inoperable after a single major engagement. Pilot Suresh Karan didn't survive. Co-pilot Ilya did, but the Jaeger was done. And that raises a real question about specialized design. A Jaeger optimized for standoff combat is only as good as its ability to maintain that standoff. The second the distance closes, you've got a lightweight machine with zero plan B. Innovative? Absolutely, but one battle and done is a tough track record to defend. Of course, the opposite response to fragility is obvious. More armor, more guns, and more punishment. Mark 5 Bracer Phoenix. At 2,128 tons, Bracer Phoenix is the heaviest Mark 5 Jaeger on this entire list, and it earned every single pound of that weight. Launched November 1st, 2025 in Shanghai, this thing was nicknamed the Shanghai Shield for its defensive record along Pacific Rim coastlines, and that name wasn't honorary. It was descriptive. Here's what makes Bracer Phoenix genuinely unique. It runs a 3-pilot configuration built on the same principle as World War II ball turrets. A rotating gunner pod sits inside the chassis, giving the third pilot independent control of the weapon systems, while the other two handle movement and combat positioning. The entire design philosophy is simple. Heavy armor, overwhelming firepower. Take every hit the kaiju can throw and keep swinging. And the firepower? Let me explain. The primary weapons are centrifugal vortex cannons, and these things are not precision instruments. When Bracer Phoenix opens up, surrounding infrastructure takes significant collateral damage. Buildings, bridges, whatever's nearby. This Jaeger fights like a wrecking ball with a targeting system. On top of that, it carries anti-kaiju missile launchers mounted on both the thighs and clavicles, and was later retrofitted with the M19 Morning Star for close-range punishment. But here's where it gets complicated. Bracer Phoenix sits at a philosophical crossroads between generations. It uses burst foil propulsion systems pulled from newer Mark V technology, while committing fully to the heavy armor doctrine of earlier designs. It's a machine built with modern tools that believes in old school war, and there's something admirable about that, until the mega kaiju bit directly through its chest armor and cockpit, killing all 3 pilots simultaneously. Just chewed through the heaviest armor on any Mark V like it was nothing, which raises an uncomfortable question. If something is strong enough to bite through your best defense, was more armor ever really the answer? And that heavy armor mindset leads straight back to the most extreme version of it ever fielded. But heavy armor and brute force doctrine were never going to be the end of the story. Once the war changed, the Jaeger program had to change with it. Gypsy Avenger. This is the Jaeger equivalent of a son surpassing his father. Gypsy Avenger weighs in at 2,000 tons and launched on January 12, 2034, making it the very first Mark VI Jaeger to enter active service after the Kaiju War. And it was built with one mission: carry forward everything Gypsy Danger represented, then do it better. The design template is identical. You can see Danger's DNA in every panel and joint, but every single system got modernized. Plasmacaster 2.0, Chainsword 2.0, Elbow Rocket 2.0, same weapons, next generation. Then they added something completely new, the Gravity Sling. Here's why this weapon matters. Every other Jaeger weapon is something you bring to the fight. The Gravity Sling lets you weaponize whatever's already there. Debris, buildings, chunks of highway overpass, entire pieces of urban infrastructure, all of it becomes anti-kaiju ammunition on the fly. You're not limited by ammo counts or energy reserves. If there's a city around you, you're armed. That's not just a bigger gun, that's a genuine tactical revolution, and the power behind all of it is absurd. Its nuclear vortex turbine combined with a secondary turbine generates enough annual energy to sustain the entire city of Chicago for a full year. 2 turbines powering 1 Jaeger that could keep millions of people's lights on. But here's the kicker: after Obsidian Fury was destroyed, the PPDC retrofitted Gypsy Avenger with the Hybrid Zone dual plasma chainsaws. They literally ripped the enemy's best weapon off its corpse and bolted it onto their champion. That's not just resourceful, that's a statement. And yet, for all that technological sophistication, Gypsy Avenger's final fight still came down to the most primitive solution imaginable. Jake Pentecost pointed the most advanced Jaeger in human history straight at the Mega Kaiju and performed a supersonic collision attack. Billions of dollars in next-generation engineering, and the winning strategy was still go really fast and hit really hard. And before we wrap, there's one more machine worth talking about, precisely because it never got the spotlight it deserved. Mark III Matador Fury. This is the Jaeger that almost starred in Pacific Rim, and the fact that it didn't might be exactly why you can't stop thinking about it. Matador Fury was Mexico's primary contribution to the Jaeger program, stationed at the Lima Shatterdome and carrying one of the most fascinating pilot backstories in the entire franchise. Its 2 pilots weren't military heroes or decorated officers. They were convicted criminals, offered their freedom in exchange for a single combat deployment inside a giant robot. 2 people with nothing left to lose, strapped into a neural link, fighting monsters for a second chance at life. That's not background lore, that's an entire movie. But here's the thing, you never got to see it. Matador Fury has 2 confirmed combat deployments on record. It dropped into battle against a Category 4 kaiju called Gyakushu. Then on October 9th, 2021, it deployed to Hawaii with Coyote Tango and Striker Eureka against the Category 3 Salamander. After that, it was destroyed during the Kaiju War. Its salvaged remains were shipped to Oblivion Bay along with every other fallen unit. No dramatic final stand, no heroic sacrifice on screen, just a quiet end and a pile of scrap metal. Now, a quick note on the specs. Supplementary sources list Matador Fury at 2,946 tons, which would make it heavier than Cherno Alpha and the single most massive Jaeger on this entire list. That said, comprehensive technical data is thin and the sourcing gets a little messy depending on where you look, but what every source agrees on is that this Jaeger existed, it fought, and it was never given the story it deserved. And that last part is the key. Guillermo del Toro himself intended to feature Matador Fury in the original film. He cut it because too many pilot backstories would have diluted the narrative, which makes complete sense from a filmmaking perspective. But it also means this machine, potentially the heaviest Jaeger ever built, piloted by 2 convicts fighting for their freedom, exists in this permanent state of what could have been. No screen time, no heroic moment, just enough lore to make you wish there was more. And honestly, that might be why Matador Fury has such a dedicated following. It's not the Jaeger that saved the world, it's the one that never got the chance to try. Sometimes the most compelling story is the one that was never told. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.